What was the most dangerous lie your wife ever told your children? My daughter was lying face down on the kitchen floor when I walked through the front door. I dropped my bag, and it hit the tile with a loud thud. My feet moved before my brain could process what I was seeing. Her small body was completely still, and her skin looked gray under the overhead light. I screamed her name, and my voice cracked against the walls. My knees slammed into the cold floor as I rolled her onto her back. Her eyes were half open, but they weren't seeing anything. I grabbed my phone from my pocket, and my hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped it. The 911 operator answered, and I started shouting our address. My wife Natalie came running down the stairs with her hair still wet from a shower. She froze at the bottom step, and her hand gripped the railing so hard her knuckles turned white. I pressed my ear to my daughter's chest and heard the faintest heartbeat. The operator told me to stay calm, but my entire body was vibrating with fear. The paramedics burst through our front door 4 minutes later with a stretcher rattling behind them. One of them pushed me aside, and my shoulder hit the wall. They were asking questions I couldn't answer because I had just gotten home from work. Natalie was crying in the corner with her hands covering her mouth. My son Micah came out of his bedroom and stood at the top of the stairs, staring down at us. His face was blank, and his hands were fidgeting with something I couldn't see. The paramedic shouted something about her pupils being dilated. Another one found an empty prescription bottle on the counter and held it up to the light. I felt my stomach drop when I recognized it as my blood pressure medication. The bottle should have been full because I had just picked it up yesterday. Now it was completely empty and rolling across the counter. Someone grabbed my arm and asked if there was anything else she could have taken. Natalie suddenly let out a wail that echoed through the whole house. I assumed my daughter had gotten into the medicine cabinet by accident. Kids do that sometimes when parents forget to lock things up. I blamed myself instantly for leaving the bottle out on the counter. My head was pounding as I followed the stretcher outside into the cold night air. The ambulance lights painted everything red and blue, and the neighbors were starting to gather on their lawns. I climbed into the back and held my daughter's hand while they worked on her. Natalie stayed behind to watch Micah, and her face looked strange through the ambulance window. Something about her expression made my chest tighten even more. At the hospital, they pumped my daughter's stomach and hooked her up to machines that beeped constantly. A nurse handed me a clipboard, and I signed papers without reading them. The doctor came out 2 hours later and told me she was stable, but it was close. He asked me how a 6-year-old knew to take pills from a specific bottle. I drove home at midnight with that question burning in my skull. Natalie was sitting on the couch with the television off when I walked inside. Micah was supposed to be asleep, but I heard his door creak open upstairs. I asked her what happened, and she shrugged her shoulders without looking at me. Something dark started crawling up my spine. I went upstairs and found Micah sitting on his bed with tears streaming down his face. He looked up at me, and his bottom lip was trembling. I knelt down in front of him and put my hands on his shoulders. He whispered that Mommy told them a secret. My blood went cold. He said Mommy called them vitamins. His words hit me like a truck going full speed. She told them those pills were special vitamins that Daddy was hiding from them. I walked back downstairs, and my footsteps were heavy on each step. Natalie was standing now with her arms crossed over her chest. I asked her if she told our kids my medication was vitamins. Her jaw tightened, and her eyes darted toward the door. She told me I was overreacting and that it was just a game. My hands balled into fists at my sides. I pulled out my phone and started recording without saying another word. She lunged forward and tried to grab it from my hands. I stepped back and bumped into the kitchen island. She was screaming that I was crazy and paranoid. I told her our daughter almost died tonight. She stopped moving, and her face went completely pale. The silence between us was deafening. I asked her why she would do this, and she just stared at the floor. The truth came out over the next 3 days during interviews with Child Protective Services. Natalie had been telling both kids for months that my medication was candy I was hiding from them. She wanted them to see me as selfish and secretive. She had been planning to file for divorce and wanted the kids to choose her. My daughter finally got brave enough to take some because her mother had made it seem so harmless. The police showed up at our house with a warrant for her arrest. They put handcuffs on her wrists while Micah watched from the window upstairs. I stood in the driveway holding my daughter who had just been released from the hospital. Natalie turned her head and looked at me one last time before they put her in the car. The door slammed shut and the cruiser pulled away from the curb. I carried my daughter inside and locked the front door behind us.